I'm just gonna need that oil, diamonds, gold, platinum, silver, copper, iron, titanium, aluminum, uranium, cobalt, titanium, back. Did you get that? ASAP, ASAP, ASAP.
Bro, please. Shut the fuck up with that shit, bro. Everybody's not on this black power, no shower tip. This is the hand I was dealt, and I still make a grip. Move in silence. That's how you make them sick. Instead of getting your bread up, you out here tempting the feds. And the moment they arrest you for being an idiot, you want to ball deep head? Who got your bail money? Your poor mother still cleaning hospital beds? Where's the media horn gotten you so far? Do you even have a house? A gal? Or a car? Not like you're changing anything that will last. As far as I'm concerned, we got purple Desmonds, but in our community, the black dollar doesn't last. And you know what really kills me at the end of the day? You cozy up to all the white folks giving you play. How else is your false arrest breaking news? It's not real sympathy, my nigga. They get millions of views. They got the advertising money while you stay confused. But keep doing you. Because it sure ain't helping me. Chasing after oppression while begging to be free.
Scene 8, Exhibit A, Microaggressions in the Workplace. Latrell often daydreams of what it would be like to clap back at her coworker like her life depended on it. Note to self, don't listen to Let's Get Free before work. Hell, I've been on edge ever since Rebecca took it upon herself to bawl out my name and say, OMG, Latrell, is that your hair? On sight. Like, I didn't even get to put my bag down good before she reached out for my tresses. I did a swift sidestep straight to my cubicle. This is Rebecca, who constantly reminds me that she has 2 biracial children that look like a cross between Northwest and Blue Ivy. But she hates doing their hair. The same Rebecca who now believes I now have a moral obligation to officiate her into blackness. Rebecca thought wrong. I took a pregnant pause. What it look like, ho? Did I not just have some faux dreads last month and Rihanna's crop the month before? So I said, no, Rebecca, this is called a weave. It allows me to be versatile, current, and 10 times more fly than your boring ass blowout. So I said, girl, I thought you of all people could tell not to fuck with me today. I just got 4 hours of sleep from submitting my grad school application, followed by a morning session with my man in between the sheets. Then I prepped this vegan lunch for my new diet, and I realized I left my salted caramel chocolate on my dressing when you asked me that dumb ass question. So I said, nothing. I looked directly in her eyes and turned back to my computer and continued to do my job. She didn't bother to repeat herself. I'm positive she could read my mind.
Will your mom ever let you keep the change? Is it cane rolls or corn rolls? Whose man blew the OSAP bag on Banner Weekend? Let's play a game of How Black Are You? Let me give you a little secret. Black people are all the same. Find out if you're black enough to fit into our model. You don't need to be black to play, especially if you've been to Africa or have at least one black acquaintance or listen to uncensored urban music. For my black folk who grew up in Barrie as far as Winnipeg, don't fret. You have just as much skin in the game as someone from Rexdale. I need about 3 brave volunteers from our audience to unapologetically answer a few miscellaneous questions about the culture. The person who has the most correct answer wins. Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna need some volunteers to speak up when I ask these questions. Is that okay? I know we live, but what Caribbean restaurant is most known for saying "Rina Abdat"?
Major.
Nature's. All of them, or all of them. I heard all of them. Any more? Well, the answer, unfortunately, the soup, breakfast, or jerk chicken might be out at a Jamaican restaurant by the time your hungry belly arrives. So good job. Let's give applause to everybody that answered. Good job. Yeah. All right. Name the first Black Prime Minister of Canada. Go ahead. Matthew DaCosta. Interesting. Nobody.
I'm gonna go with nobody.
Nobody. All right, Muhammad says nobody. Anybody else?
Does blackface count?
Maybe. Whoa! We got a winner! Ding, 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 ding. Yes, that was a trick question. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was caught black-handed supporting various painted-on ethnicities over the years. And because it's Canada, we apologize for it. Which supreme goddess' birthday falls on September 4th? Beyonce! Ha! Jesus, Beyonce was all except the answers, by the way. Yes, according to the Queen Beehive. Question number 4. In what year did Caravana start? 67. Wow! That's correct! Don't think your granny didn't catch a bubble or two of wine when she was there saved, before she was saved, actually. Yes. Question 5. At which Toronto intersection is the first and only Afrocentric alternative school located?
Gin and Shepherd.
Keira Morris.
Or Keelan. Keelan Shepherd.
Wow! Hill and Shepherd. That's correct. Yes. Don't go to those other areas, by the way. Just stick to what the young man said last. Students start the day off with a school-wide morning assembly reciting 7 principles of the Ngozi, Saba, and daily affirmations. Bomb, bomb. Bonus question. This is actually worth 2 extra points. Before Toronto was known as the Six, the city was dubbed T. Finish the words from the classic hit Bacardi slang by Cardinal Official. Y'all think we are Jamaicans? Enough of man that Trinis, Bajan, Grenadians, and a whole heap of Haitians, Chinese, and all of the West Indians combined to make the T.O. One of a kind. Yes, thank you all for playing.
It's April 1851. We're inside the St. Louis Hall in Toronto, where Frederick Douglass has been invited as a guest lecturer by the Anti-Slavery Society of Canada. Frederick finds himself unusually uncomfortable. Friends and fellow citizens, members of society. I have delivered many a speech at great length from my first place of refuge, Lynn, Massachusetts, to the muggy streets of Paisley, Scotland. When I was invited to speak by the Anti-Slavery Society of Canada, I immediately accepted, as I had a wild curiosity to see for myself where tens of thousands of my people have escaped horror and found refuge in a not so distant land. I was paid handsomely, the smoothest of transactions, effortless. Nevertheless, I have seen little evidence of this promised land. Why would this country have such a society with not so much of a Negro in sight? It is such a violent sensation to drown in whiteness and firm handshakes, to see men salivate as I speak, tickled by my eloquence, to be considered a marvel of beasts. Although I speak for the oppressed, my abolitionist work has been perverted. For my father's blood, the colonization of my anatomy is deemed the logical credit of my dreams. Is this skin that clothes my soul merely a vessel for another man's desires? As I stand in this chamber for the local city's council, I am washed in an unexpected terror that silently reigns my body hostage. These men, passively influent, anchor at the forefront, peacocking their privilege. I am accustomed to grimace, densely fitted hoods, weapons carried openly. And now I stand surrounded in a packed room. A few brothers among the crowd, but not with the crowd. I can see it in their eyes that they do not even have to run anymore. But they too are surrounded, standing in this room. It has struck that these Canadian men believe themselves to be good. It's dangerous. I can sniff sense of slavery, even in this new construction. But there's no sign of the source. There's no haven for my people. Merely a surveilled resting place. I never thought this journey would ever come in my life. I cannot return, but I cannot wait to return home.
Thank you so much, Angaer and David and Dennis. I'm now going to ask Natasha and Bee to join us on stage. So we'll do a little switcheroo. Bee Quammie is a writer, media commentator, and public speaker. She has a degree in health sciences from the University of Western Ontario and spent over a decade in the healthcare industry before transitioning to writing and media. As a freelance writer, she's had bylines in publications like The Globe and Mail, Chatelaine, Men's Health, Maclean's, TripAdvisor, Best Health, and many more. So it sounds like you might have read her writing before. She frequently writes on topics surrounding parenting, race and culture, travel, food, feminism, fashion and beauty, health and wellness, and pop culture. She's currently working on her first book, which will be published in 2024 by Penguin Canada. And so our playwright today, Natasha Adiyana Morris, is a soft-spoken dramatic storyteller. Born in Winnipeg and raised in Toronto's West End, and I apologize for what I'm going to say here because my accent is not going to be correct, but in the most encouraging and full-up Jamaican household, being extra is in her blood. Sorry, that was very, recognized for founding Peace of Mind Arts, an initiative that presents work in progress by Black play creators. She owes a great deal to the esteemed tutelage of Bee Current and the Africa Theatre, Obsidian Theatre, and Volcano Theatre. And she's honored to be a Soulpepper Academy member and York University alumnus. And I'll now turn things over to Bee and Natasha.
So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. To have seen this in the before times, to see it live, and then to actually be able to sit with this piece in the privacy of my own home and take it in. So we're going to talk about a few different things that I want to get into on that. But to kick things off and just to start, in the beginning, Annie mentioned that The Negroes Are Congregating is a play about the evolving Black experience in Canada and around the world, really, in the diaspora, which is really a big story. So what was that seed? What was that thing that got planted that you thought this could be a thing?
It's kind of a quilt play, as you can see. It's many vignettes. And as I continue to write it, I'm like, oh, this kind of goes together. So there's like a somewhat of a central character, Preston. But really, the title, The Negroes Are Congregating, just passed through the conversation, and I was making a joke, a satirical joke, and I was like, ooh, I have to do something with that because it just kind of resonated. And one of the first pieces that I had was one that was just read, the bishop, you can't dead us. We know you're fed up. And just thinking about like what do we say in privacy that we want to say or yearn to say in public without violent repercussions. And that's essentially it.
And I have to say, when I heard about the play, I heard it was called The Negroes Are Congregating, even without knowing anything that I would see, talking with other friends who were planning on seeing it, that meant something to us, because I don't know, for other folks out there, the Black folks might understand that feeling when you may be at work and there's a couple of you guys like talking in the lunchroom and somebody comes in and is like, ooh, what's going on? And it's like, we're just having the weekend. If like 2 or 3 Black
Right.
folk are together in a space that you usually only see one Black person, it becomes a thing. And it's something that we navigate consciously and unconsciously at times. So that was definitely a genius moment. Whatever that was that sparked that for you to bring this about was very genius. So I'm a writer, and I'm always fascinated with other writers' processes. So what was the process like? You mentioned it was like a quilt, but what was it like to actually write this? What is your setting? What is ideal for you in terms of how you actually would write and create?
Well, this was really pulled from some experiences that I hear from other people. And that's why normally I kind of write from my own experience, but this piece that I'm not performing in, I was like, I'm kind of not telling other people's stories, but like a broader community story. For example, there's a scene, like a white supremacy conference, that just like talking about the work environment where there's this heightening of equity, diversity, and companies kind of like trying to implement things on a whim so that they don't get in trouble. And so a guy I knew that worked for an engineering firm was the only Black guy there. And they're kind of like, hey man, like join our like brown team. Like we'd love for you to participate. And he was like, no, thank you. And they just kept like pushing it where he's like, are you asking me or are you telling me? But the kicker was there was also like a white man's group like that they would go and conference together to solve racism. And I was like, you are not serious. So I was like, what would that be like? And then I wrote that scene. So I think there's like a lot of surrealism in the scenes because it's like all of our emotions, they're not linear. So I tried to bring the extraness. So like just starting out with like a simple concept of microaggression and like how can it kind of be dramatized.
Yeah. And I think it's that surrealism and that kind of fantastical aspect of the writing that is what actually brings us in, because like you said, those are the things that we imagine. Those are the things that we wish we could say, like the experience, the piece that you wrote, the part about Latrell and the hair. I mean, that is a thing that you wish you could just say a whole bunch of different things, but you usually just let it go and get back to work and all that kind of stuff. Quick story, I used to like, Black girl, do my hair, do different things. I used to work in healthcare, and one day I got a talking to on a Monday morning when I came into work with new braids because I was distracting my coworkers.
Wow.
And I'm the one that got the talking to instead of the coworkers who couldn't just stay at the cubicle and do their job, right? So hearing Latrell's piece when I saw it and then reading it, I was just like, yeah, girl, Latrell and I, we feel it, we feel it. So it's that surrealism, I think, that it's just like the reality is so weird itself that the surrealism is almost more real because that's the authenticity. So I think that's really, that's something that is really, that really caught me as a viewer and a reader. So let me ask you, so what, if you could imagine your ideal setting, we might have some millionaires in the audience. We might have some people who know some people with money. What would your ideal setting for writing be? Do you need to be on a beach somewhere? Childcare might be a thing that is important. Do you need like your favorite coffee? Are you a morning writer? Are you a late night writer? Like, what does it look like to be like, I'm gonna sit down and write and this would be my perfect setting?
Well, more and more, what's important to me now is collaboration. For playwriting, it's like you're just this ogre in a basement writing by yourself, hoping that whatever you're writing makes sense and is desirable to other people. But because theater is live and on stage and has so many different elements, I think the musicality in this piece, like thinking of the set and the costumes, like that plays it's in a sense for the audience just as important because it's a whole experience. And so I guess like money wise, it's like working with people early on to kind of discuss ideas and play with things rather than at the end when it probably could have been influenced to be like a grander idea to like have some more thoughts going into it of like what could this be.
Okay, so we want to fund like a writer's retreat
Yes.
for you and like a bunch of people
Right.
and go somewhere. And, okay, all right, so we'll see who's, percolating out there. Maybe somebody listening online is going to be able to hook something up. So, because we need more amazing works, right? So did the collaboration part that you mentioned, did that play into kind of like the world building in this piece, in the Negroes Are Congregating? Because you've got such strong characters, but such strong location, whether it's the Black Twitter, the church, the workplace. Did those things just kind of like naturally come to mind for you? Did you obviously maybe draw from your own personal experiences, from those of people that you knew? Like, how did you just come up with these characters and these places that you wanted to have in the story?
Well, like when Drake lost his BlackBerry, that he's like, I have so much ideas. I don't have BlackBerry, I just have like a very old iPhone that I just write random notes and I'll go back to. There's like themes that I'll think about. Like a big one was outside, like we live in Canada and we know that we're not the majority. And so obviously that's going to play a big role. But what does racism look like in a country where Black people are the majority, or cities where Black people are the majority, and racism is still like a huge factor, undeniable factor. And that's where like I was thinking about Winnie Mandela and how much of like a badass she is. And even people saying like, I really didn't like Winnie, like she's evil. And having so many ideas about, I guess, women that speak out and kind of on par with Nelson's story, but like because he chose a different like peaceful poetic way versus the other of like where we want to go with things. It's like she just gets a bad rap. So Frederick Douglass, I'm like, okay, pulling it back to Canada. This is like a real thing that happened where he was invited by the Anti-Slave Society of Canada, and I'm just like, what was that? Like that just to me, I can imagine that being super uncomfortable and just being like, hello, welcome to like the kind of Canadian propaganda that you get already.
Polite propaganda. Come in and fix us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't have all the information, but I know one tidbit is that, he was telling the other Black people in the audience, like, y'all need to go back home. We're not done here. Like, which is not how I reinterpreted it. But it's just like not the cute, cozy Canadian historic moment. Is that what's called? Heritage moment?
Heritage, yes.
That we are used to.
Right. Now, you actually just spoke on my next question, because I was going to ask about the Winnie and Frederick Douglass characters, because those are real people. Did those take you longer to write or to conceptualize because they are real people that you were reimagining, or was it easier?
No, I felt like those were pretty easy to write. The hardest one, like, I'm still not happy. I'm still not
Really?
happy. Is the church. And you guys know, like, I reworked that church like 100 times. I'm like, I do not know how to get out what I'm trying to say. I just know that church needs to be in the play.
Mhm.
And it's difficult because I think the Black community, the generalization, has a love-hate relationship with the church. It's like, we love Jesus, we love God, we hate oppression through Christianity, indoctrination, missionaries, slavery,
Exactly.
leading with Christianity. But it's like, Black church is not that.
Right.
But Black church is that. When you see white Jesus,
Exactly.
when you walk in. So it's like such a difficult thing to tackle.
Yeah.
So that one was like, I gotta let it go, and maybe the next edition you'll see a different scene. But it is what it is right now.
It makes sense. I mean, I thought it was beautiful, but as the creator, you're gonna see it. Yes, you're gonna see it a different way, right? But I think that for all of those reasons that you mentioned, that is like such a fraught area, and to capture the emotions and the different aspects is, that's a really critical piece. But I thought it was amazing. So don't be too hard on yourself. So with your characters, you've got different scenes, and we heard one of them earlier tonight, where characters are speaking in opposition to each other. Did you struggle at all to kind of balance words of these characters you're creating, even though they might be saying things that you don't personally agree with? Like, how did you wrestle with that when you've got to write this response and you're like, oh, but I don't want to say these, like, I wouldn't say this.
Yeah.
But I have to say this to further this story. How did you navigate that?
Well, like, there has to be the gray area. It's not, this is right, this is wrong. Speaking to, like, I mean, this guy's essentially representing Black Lives Matter, and then you have working class guy who's just like, I don't fuck with that.
Right.
This does not affect me. And how do I get that point of view without making that person a villain? But that you can just have two opposing opinions that are both valid.
Right.
And that's where that came in, because I was like, it's feeling a little too cushy. And I'm like, there's a lot of people that don't think the same way, and where do they fit in?
So just switching gears a little bit from the kind of creation aspect to the fact that Negroes Are Congregating, it's still a play, there's the play aspect, but now we've got this thing that we can take home, like I said, read it in the privacy of our own homes, interpret it the way we interpret it without actually seeing the physicality of the creation. How do you want people to engage with this now as a book? Instead of, or even whether it's people who saw the play and now have the book, or people who didn't get to see the play but now have the book. I'm just thinking about the difference in medium telling the story, and what do you envision in terms of how people will engage with it as a physical book?
Well, I do think it's important to kind of have some of the sound concept for the, the rhythmic pieces, but at the same time, like, having somebody, like, two people read the same piece, I'm like, oh, you're pretty much reading it the same. That's good. So that's something, like, I kind of worry about, like, if that's getting lost in the flat text. But I do have a lot of people saying, like, there was a lot that I saw, and, like, I want to read it and take it in, because I was not able to process everything. So that's the benefit of the book. And I also feel like you can, sit down and read it and enjoy it and talk about it. And I don't say you can't do that with, like, conventional plays, but I think there's a lot more that, like, you can take a piece.
Exactly.
Than a longer journey. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's a brilliant thing. I didn't even think about the aspect of somebody who did see the play, because now I recognize myself in that. Somebody who saw the play, but then is able to sit with the text and pick up on things that they may have missed as they were processing in the moment of the play. I think that just makes for a richer experience for people who are lucky enough to have both. But I think it's also really interesting because I'm always somebody who likes to read the book before I see the movie, right? So because I like to imagine my own thing before I get the image of what's been imagined for me. And I feel like that's the beautiful thing. I can't wait to have people read this who didn't see the play and let them imagine, what do you think Preston looks like? What do you think the pastor, how is he moving? What do you think Angela looks like? When you're reading these things about like dynamic movement and sound, what does that sound like? I think it's going to be really interesting to even hear people read it out loud and hear how it's interpreted
Right.
and things of that nature. I just think this is going to be like, people could do book clubs and all kinds of stuff off of this, and I'm going to promote it. So if you, I'll promote it. I'll get it out there because I think that it's a really creative way to engage with a piece of work that has these different lives. So, but thank you for that, because I was just like, I wonder how it feels to have both sides of that. So in your acknowledgements, you thank the audience. Right? You thank the audience for their support, for challenging you, for many different things. So I'm wondering, did you learn anything new about this piece of art or about your own kind of creative mission through feedback that you got from your audiences or that you've gotten since?
Yes. And even from you.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, so I remember your question saying, you know, like why, and I'm paraphrasing, but I did kind of rework one piece with that question in mind of like why does the Black woman kind of essentially like lose in one of the pieces, like.
Oh, I did ask that.
Yeah, it's like why? Why is that the narrative though? And I was like, because sometimes we lose.
Yeah.
But I was also looking at, well, if you kind of lost what you wanted, what happens next? And that's how I eventually like, you know what, I got me, I'm enough. Instead of ending it on like, F you. On this like piece about Black love that is unloving. So, and I also got a lot of feedback from Black men like, don't do it like that. You know? But I think there's like representation of, you know, Black fathers, businessmen, like ratchet, grad school, whatever, politicians, etc. So on purpose, and like that's my experience too. But that again, it's like one of those things talking about Black love, and like it's a bit of a fantasy,
Yes.
and it's a reality.
Right.
But it's something that, you know, we're struggling with, but what kind of like getting a snapshot of what the struggle is and where it's at without dragging anyone.
Exactly. Okay, so when did it, I'm trying to remember, was it end of 2019? Was it early 2020?
Early 2020.
Early 2020 that it was at Theater Passé, right? That's what it's something like that. It's like, that's right. Okay, I'm trying to do some extra French.
No, I did that for the longest time.
Okay, TPM.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I'm just gonna say this is kind of like a really interesting full circle moment for me, even having you bring that back up and think back to that time and think back to that question. Because, and I talk my business sometimes, so it's okay, like, we're all friends here. But at that time, I had just left my marriage. And I think the idea of the Black woman losing hit very personally, because that was a time that I felt I had lost. So even to consider now, and this is just like, I don't know, just the magic of art and the magic of just being in the right place at the right time for me to see this and ask this question. And now, years later, we're having this conversation where you're talking about reworking and realizing that you're enough and you have that love for yourself. And it feels like that's kind of where I'm at now too. So this is a weird like synergy thing. This is a weird thing happening because yeah, it just took me back to that moment and I remembered exactly why I felt the way I felt when I asked that question, knowing that this might just be my feelings talking. This is not like art critic B asking a question. This is my feelings.
Yeah.
But that's what art does, right? That's what art does. That's amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. So we're gonna switch a little bit more. I've got a few more questions and then I've got folks, if you've got questions, please keep them top of mind. So this is like a beautiful black ass piece of art, authentic, right? You've covered, like you mentioned, the different aspects of what communities look like and not this monolith of blackness. How did you navigate relationships with different gatekeepers throughout the process of creating this and bringing this to life in the different ways you brought it to life? Were there different challenges? Did you find that it was easier than you maybe expected because of the teams of the people that you had behind you? Like, just what was that like to navigate making this the way it is and the way you wanted it to be?
Yeah. Well, I'm used to self-producing, and I find like that gets the ball rolling like years faster than waiting to be picked up or developed. But I think this piece kind of like it started in the Peace of Mind Festival, and then I kind of like pitched it to some festivals. One in like, my memory. Black Theater Conference in Memphis and the Atlanta Black Theater Festival, also Summer Works and Halifax Fringe. So it's kind of like in the same year.
Okay.
Because I'm really feeling this play. I feel like the audience has great reception, and let's just see what happens. But I also thought like it's too black to be black for mainstream. Like I'm like, I'm putting it out there.
Right.
But I know they're gonna say no. But I was kind of surprised. Like I feel in a way they're just like, oh yeah, whatever. Like it's all good. I'm like, you read. you went through.
Like, you know,
don't be surprised.
Exactly.
Like don't be anxious. Like she'll kind of be calling. But yeah, I think I was like, whoa, then is it too soft? Like I don't know. Do I need to amp it up? But I think like my fear of it just like being, I guess, too radical or offensive, it turned out to be, provocative in the way that I want it to be. And I don't know, the last place it was supposed to be like was on a campus, Algonquin College in Ottawa. And I was like, really? This is up your alley. So I don't know. So that's why it's like keep shooting your shot. I don't.
You never know.
I'm like, it's public. You want to publish this? So
Exactly. You create it, and the opportunities come, right? So I'm really curious. Like, what was the reception like in the U.S.? Because when we're talking, you say it's a black thing. A lot of minds go to like an African American perspective, but this is such a Canadian, Caribbean diasporic perspective. What was it like in the US and dealing with those audiences or those folks there?
I feel like the reception, and you can chime in, but I feel like the reception in the States were more like, that was awesome. This is Canadian? Oh, really? So you have like racism there, but that was like fine because I felt like that it could be a bit more, not like universal, but
Right.
Western. But I also felt like some audience members in Canada were like, racism does not exist anymore. And that's coming from like Black audience members too, like.
I do
Can we
remember.
like get over this?
I do remember. I think there was a question or a comment I remember, and I was just like, okay, this is different.
Yeah.
This is not.
So that's something I haven't done in the States. And also when we did it in Switzerland, there was some pushback on the Christian aspect too, of like, is this something like we're celebrating? Because we're not celebrating that.
Oh,
That
okay.
is not happening here. And I was like, okay. Understood. So, yeah, just different.
Yeah. Different levels, definitely. So my last question then, I'm just gonna kind of combine the last two that I've got for you because they kind of work together. We're talking just before we got on motherhood, multiple babies, no sleep, life is wild. Yes, things going on, and but then that inevitably forces us to look at and think about the future every day when we're raising these babies to bring them in, to continue to bring them into the world. So how does a piece like this and working on it and creating this and seeing it continue to take new life, how does it help you to envision a new future for Black folks in Canada and the diaspora, knowing that now you've got little ones, I got little ones, you've got a little one, like there's little ones, right? So how does this play help you to kind of think about it, conceptualize, or kind of envision what that future might look like?
Well, in a way, I guess like Black Twitter is a good example because that, Black Twitter, when I first heard of it, I'm like, there is a Black Twitter, and it's like a hashtag.
Oh, like a separate app?
Yeah. But I was like, this is hilarious. I'm hours into the rabbit hole. Like, I love the calling out. I love like the uncensored approach. Like, it's just funny and raw. And I was like, I love this. I mean, it's getting a little too woke right now. Like, you have a problem with everything, you can't do that. But I think like that the mentality is not the same as like millennials, like what are we at?
The new one is Gen Z?
Gen Z.
Yeah.
Gen Z, like they don't give to.
Oh, yeah, they're different.
And that's exciting for me to see, like, people not being kind of like, help, we can't do that,
Exactly.
They're like, we done today, we're doing it again. Make space, seat at the table, build our own table.
Yeah, they're challenging it all.
Yeah, so I'm, excited for that. At the same time, like, as a mama bear, I don't know, like, I'm definitely, like, heightened of, like, feeling like, I don't know what's gonna happen with our children, that, like, as they get older, that's something that's scary. Like, thinking of police states or guns and all this. So I don't know. I mean, like, I was gonna wear this shirt, Lord protect me in these streets. But it didn't fit. But shout out to that shirt. Yeah, I mean, like, I can't just walk around in fear and everything is all good. So just like, walking the line.
On that line, yeah, that's what we do. Well, works like this help us to speak about things and feel things and imagine something different. So I want to thank you for that, definitely. So let's give Natasha. If there's any questions that anybody's got? I asked them all, that's
I
right.
have another question.
Oh.
Well, I was just wondering what you're working on now. Any new plays coming out?
So I'm working on a long play that I think started in like 2008.
Oh, wow. You gotta say the 2000.
It's called Half and Half. That name has changed, but it's actually kind of evolved to speaking about motherhood, because I feel like it was a missing component to this journey of womanhood, and just like so many things being tied to a man as your work, and how that just starts from adolescence, the big deal about losing your virginity and like dating and toxic relationships and isolation. Being like, forget you, I'm a gold digger, let's like these coins, or like all this kind of like confusion that you go through trying to find yourself. And yeah, so I'm adding in motherhood and have like a band that's playing. It's kind of like like NPR, Tiny Desk
Okay.
type play. I'm like, I'm not the actor. Like that's what I'm taking in. I'm not the actor, but I can deliver. And
Yes.
that's where I'm stationing it. Yeah. So that's what I'm working on.
Can't wait.
Any other audience questions? Yeah.
So congratulations, Natasha, that's awesome. You have a notebook. I've been to 2 live performances, and I've already told you this, I felt extremely uncomfortable, but in a very good way. And as you're reflecting, something I was pondering was like, in a way you did a calling in, not a calling out, right? Because I was uncomfortable, but I wasn't like offended, and it was like defensive, and I wasn't like, right? I was actually like, oh crap, and I'm taking what you're saying. Did you do that on purpose, or is it just the Canadianness to call in as opposed to call out?
Well, I think I was just trying to reveal this internalized conversation that is just like mounting. It's like, should I do this? Should I do that? Like, Michelle's going through all these things of what I should have said or what I ought to said, but like I didn't say anything because just weighing the outcomes and like how heavy that is to carry day to day. And I mean, even someone as prominent as like Frederick Douglass having the same like internal conversation, and he's been back and forth, round and round, up and down. So yeah, I think it is a lot of what we feel on the inside just coming out. So yeah, it doesn't feel like as tugging at the audience. I think they can just be like, oh, I can relate to that.
Well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Bee and Natasha. This was phenomenal. So that is our program for this evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out in person, online to celebrate the Negroes Are Congregating. You can pick up a copy of the book at the catch desk there, and I'm sure Natasha will be very happy to sign it for you. So thanks everybody online and everyone in person. Please grab some food. I'm going to go have a snack, and thank you very much.
Thank you.